Good evening, everybody. My name's Barry Katz, and I'm the producer of this film, I Killed JFK. I thought I should share with you my story and why I'm here and why I got involved in this film. I'm not a guy who's an on-camera personality. I've never done a television show. I've never been really in front of cameras like this. I do host a podcast called Industry Standard, where I go behind the scenes and interview some of the most important players in Hollywood and the entertainment business. But this is way different. I started as a stand-up comedian. I'm a comedy guy. I'm not a documentarian. I'm not a person who's done these kind of things before. And I wanted to be able to share with you how I got involved in this. Essentially, I got a call. I was told there was a guy who was going to come to my office. He wanted to show me something that was really important. The man came in, he opened his laptop. I saw some raw footage of some of the people involved in the JFK assassination. I was riveted, I was fascinated. The man closed his computer and he left. The reason why I'm here is, like most of you, I remember a tragedy that happened. I remember as a young child being in my kitchen and seeing my mother crying as she watched the portable black and white television on the counter and the funeral of JFK. And throughout my whole life, I could never figure out why this mystery had never been solved. Why 50 years and this is still the greatest unsolved murder mystery in history. And that's why I'm here, because I'm curious just like you, and I want to figure out the truth. I want to know what happened, and I want to search for the answers. And I can't guarantee that you're going to find them tonight. You're going to have to draw your own conclusions. I've drawn mine, and I hope you draw yours. Please enjoy this special event presentation of I Killed JFK. All right, without further ado, it's time to introduce our esteemed panel guests for tonight's special evening. My first guest tonight is a man who is a U.S. government, intelligence, and national security expert to the highest order. Please welcome Gordon Ferry. Hey, Gordon, thanks for being here.
Welcome to our home.
My next guest I'm really excited to have here. He's the author of the best-selling book Blood, Money, and Power. Please welcome Barr McClellan. Hey Barr, thanks for coming.
Hi there.
My next guest is a real pleasure to have with us tonight. I'm really truly honored that she could make it. She is the foremost expert on Lee Harvey Oswald, having been his lover, and is one of the last living experts on the JFK assassination. Please welcome Judith Very Baker. Hi Judith, thanks for coming.
Hi.
My next guest I'm really happy to have here. He was an integral part of the film and a man who is an expert on James Files, a former FBI agent, and one of the foremost experts on the JFK assassination. Please welcome Zach Shelton. Thanks for coming, Zach.
Barry, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
My next guest I'm really excited to have here. He's an incredible man and a colorful figure I know you're going to enjoy. He was a journalist in 1963 in Dallas, and he's author of the best-selling New York Times book Crossfire, The Plot That Killed Kennedy, which was a basis for the Oliver Stone film JFK. Please welcome Jim Marrs. Thanks for coming, Jim.
Thank you, Barry.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for being here tonight and for allowing us to hear your stories and sharing your expertise on this amazing story and this incredible mystery that's been going on for over 50 years. And I can't think of a better way to start the questioning than with this one. Who do you believe actually killed JFK, and do you feel that James Files fired the fatal shot?
The principal shooter was, in fact, to be Nicoletti. And James Files, as was he faithfully reported, was asked to be backup shooter, and he did exactly what I would have done. I walked Dealey Plaza in less time than he did, and I picked the same places as a sniper would.
I mean, you can't help but believe the guy. And based on him, he shows there's a conspiracy and a cover-up. I came up with the James Files, as is in the documentary, by his one comment: if the American people really knew what happened, they wouldn't be able to handle it. Files told various individuals prior to me receiving that comment, an undercover agent and a source, said it again to another person that passed it on to another agent. And after talking to Files and after looking at the evidence, three things happened relating to Files. He took the shot, and he's telling the truth. He actually took the shot behind the picket fence of where the House Select Committee, through the acoustics test, put a shooter. He was with Nicoletti when Nicoletti shot, and he put the weapon in his own hand and claimed that he shot. Or number three, he wasn't even there, and Nicoletti regurgitated everything that happened that day. I'm the opinion, I don't totally discredit the fact that he pulled the trigger. I'm more apt to believe that he was with Nicoletti and Nicoletti took the shot, and he's saying he did. But I don't know if we'll ever know. He was there. There's too much facts in his story that fit. But I don't think any of us will ever be able to say 100% that he took the shot.
I believe James Files is trying to make up for sins of the past. I think that it's reasonable that people say, well, he shouldn't have been at the grassy knoll because one, he was too young, or at the last minute, why did they put him there? But he said he had been there a week. If anybody knew where to position themselves, he would have known. So it's logical to me that he could have been in the position there at the grassy knoll. I believe that James Files is the closest we're going to get to understanding the role of the mafia. Jimmy Files has nothing to gain by what he's confessed. Jimmy has mentioned with the most cold and lack of passion how he shot JFK. This is what a person does when they are a killer.
And you're looking for results here because you don't have video from Lyndon Johnson saying, yeah, I set it up. You don't have a video from the CIA saying we set it up. You don't have a video from a lot of other people that knew about this. But the main thing you have is people talking about it at the time of the assassination. And you have this almost universal rejection of the Warren report. I mean, what are you going to say? You get this report that is impossible. You get the film that is a Zapruder film, and then you get this gangland murder and the mafia having maybe a role in it. It looks like it. So all these things kind of add up, and then you get information that points to one result.
Right now today, even though a lot of people have been named as a second gunman, as far as I know, there's only two that's actually confessed that has any kind of credible evidence to support that confession. And one of those is James Files, and one of those is was a Dallas policeman at the time, Roscoe White. But it's really kind of inconsequential because it's not so much who could have killed him. Anyone could have killed him, including the proverbial lone nut. The real question is who had the power to cover it up for more than 50 years?
Based on everything we know and all the evidence that's coming out, why do you think the mainstream mass media still, to this day, pushes forth the Oswald did it alone theory?
Information is out there. There's been people come forward. There's been people confess. There's been documents that have been brought forward, dribbled out over the years. The problem is the distribution of that information has not occurred, and that's because there's only 5 corporations that control everything we see and hear, and they've seen to it that most of this information does not reach the public. In 1963, there was a coup d'etat, okay, and unfortunately, most of corporate America went along with it, and so now they just cannot bring themselves to say, yeah, okay, we were either duped or we went along with it. Back in the 70s, when I was teaching a course on the Kennedy assassination at the University of Texas, Arlington, I told my students then, I said, you know, the grassy knoll gunman could come forward, confess, have some evidence to support his story. And I said, nobody would buy it, nobody would believe it, nobody would hear it, and the controlled mass media would not spread his story. And sure enough, look at James Files. You know, as far as I know, he's still alive. I understand he's now out of prison, you know, but he went on camera, he confessed, and there's evidence and physical evidence that would tend to link him to the crime. And he was connected to the Chicago mob and was intimately involved with people who could be shown to have been involved in the assassination. And yet most people have never even heard of him, and he's never been on national television. And, you know, so yeah, they've come forward and people have talked. You just don't hear about it.
And we have people in the U.S. who have uncovered, and it's on the record, you can find it in the government records, that shows the CIA had complete operations of subduing the media here in the United States and does to this day. All the investigators who have written wonderful articles, books, and what have you based on tidbits of information, really, that information is suppressed. Major publishing houses will not publish them, so they have to go to small publishers. In other cases, you have the fact that at the time of the assassination and in the investigations thereafter, the FBI was going around and they were gathering up all the information they could get, and they were either destroying it, altering it, or they were locking it up for decades not to be looked at. Because J. Edgar Hoover was involved in this, and the people who worked with him on the technical side of altering evidence, there were about 5 of them, were all subpoenaed to appear before Congress, and they were all murdered within 2 weeks. Frankly, it's the swamp that Mr. Trump is involved with now. Draining the swamp means exposing these institutions for the criminality of what they've been involved in. And trust me, it'll happen this year.
I put a great deal of faith in Gordon because he can explain how it worked, and he was there in so many ways. And as you have to do is accept what looks like and is probably the best story and see how it holds up. And for now, I do. And I back him, and we're going to see where this goes. We're trying in later events that I'm going to set up, try this case and see that we can't make the proof in writing, have what I call living history. Go to court, tell them what we know, explain the conspiracy, see what Johnson's friends might want to say now to defend him, and I doubt it, but that's up to them. They haven't said anything yet, and see how it all plays out. But this story needs to go first. What we're going to do, and having looked into it, is seek a pardon for Lee Harvey Oswald. And until we get past this, we've got to get past this to get to the pardon stage. And it has to be from the president, because Lee Harvey Oswald was never tried. As far as I know, never indicted or anything.
Who did Oswald really work for, and do any of you on the panel believe that he tried to kill or was the shooter who killed JFK? If in fact he wasn't the person who took the shot, and who framed him, and why?
I'm the last living witness who can tell you the truth about Lee Harvey Oswald and what really happened. I wasn't there in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd. I can tell you everything about him up to 37 and a half hours before the assassination. And so they have Lee Oswald, they say, meeting with Kostikov, calling him on the phone. And yet we have Hoover himself, the head of the FBI, in a conversation that we have recorded, saying that Lee Oswald was not the person that was talking to Kostikov in this broken Russian. This was a fake. This was an imposter. It wasn't Lee Oswald. Despite that, History Channel pretends it was. It's just outrageous. And they do things like that. I can tell you, I can assert to you as a fact, Lee Harvey Oswald went to Mexico City to hand off a biological weapon. They don't want you to know about things like this, because if the world knew that Lee was CIA and that he had been framed and cruelly betrayed by the CIA, they would understand a little bit about how the CIA can't be trusted even by its own operatives. Lee and I were going to go and live in Mexico. We had been promised that we could be just informants for the FBI and CIA there, and all that was lies.
A good example here is that one of the key pieces of evidence against Oswald is that on Monday evening, following the Friday assassination, the Dallas district attorney suddenly announced that we've got his fingerprints on the rifle. Well, that seemed to cinch it in the minds of most people, okay? What they don't know is that the Friday night of the assassination, the rifle was illegally and surreptitiously shipped to Washington. The next day, the FBI crime lab examined it, and in a document signed by Hoover himself stated there were no usable fingerprints on the rifle or even the inner parts of the rifle. And then on Sunday, FBI agents brought the rifle back to Dallas. They took the rifle to Miller Funeral Home, where they were preparing Oswald's body for burial. And the funeral home director, Paul Grudy, told me back then at the time and through the years, and has stated publicly, that he was there when they put Oswald's dead hand on the rifle. And then that evening they said, oh, we've got his fingerprints on the rifle. Now, you know, under those circumstances, I don't think there's a jury in the world that would have convicted him on that flaky piece of evidence.
I'd like you to take me through the process of what happened after Kennedy was pronounced dead at Parkland Hospital, and the controversy surrounding the autopsy and the facts that you know about what happened to Kennedy's body during that process.
From a formal criminal investigation standpoint, it would have to start with the botched autopsy of President Kennedy. Here's the President of the United States. He's assassinated, and his is one of the worst autopsies that I've ever heard. And I'm an old police reporter. Back in the day, I used to stand in on the autopsies, and I'd watch them perform, and they would explain things to me. And I saw how that you can tell which side of the body the bullet entered on, and how the wound is beveled, so you can tell, you know, which direction it came from. We've got the technology to solve these things, and yet it wasn't solved. It was obscured. And to me, that tells the whole story right there. This was a power shift at the highest levels of the federal government. There's a very important point to the autopsy of JFK, namely that I think this was one of the slip-ups, okay, to this prototype of assassinations, which, although well-planned, well-executed, it didn't really come off exactly the way they had planned. And one of the most important aspects of this was the fact that early on, according to the radio traffic, when they got in the plane, they were coming back from Dallas to Washington. It was obvious they had planned to go to Walter Reed Army Hospital. Okay, now I suspect that they probably had lined up some very credible autopsy doctors who would give them the verdict that they wanted. Probably thought they had everything all set. What happened there was Jackie Kennedy. She said no. Jack was in the Navy. He didn't want to go to Bethesda Naval Hospital. And so at the last minute, they had to change the hospitals, and they had to round up those three doctors who had no bullet experience, you know, with bullet wounds. If you really study the details of the Kennedy autopsy, these three doctors were under intense pressure and manipulation by military officers who would not even allow them to do basic autopsy procedures, such as examine for bullet wounds in the clothing. They wouldn't allow them to look at the clothing. They wouldn't allow. They were directing them. They said, "Look at this. Don't look at this." Okay, it's incredible. But the president of the United States got a worse autopsy than probably any wino that dies on the street of a U.S. city.
I was in the home of Jim Siebert. He's a decorated World War II veteran. He was in the FBI 20 something, 25, 26 years. He was 82 at the time I interviewed him at his home. And the whole time he knew I was there, knew what I was doing, researching the JFK assassination. And his eyes were asking me, tell me what happened, because I've been living this lie all this time. And if you notice, when you talk about our inspector lying in his report to the Warren Commission about these guys didn't take any notes, and basically they never testified for the Warren Commission, and you can tell the cover-up was in place. But their report, number one, is the shot from the rear did not go through Kennedy, did not hit him in the neck. Of course, we know now it's 5.5 to 6 inches below the neckline is where the bullet entered, 1 to 2 inches to the right of the spine. Well, the thing about this bullet and this wound is it went 2 inches and the path stops. Now, where the bullet is, I don't know. Is it the bullet found on the stretcher, on this vacated stretcher? I don't know. But their testimony is so precise as to who left the room, who came in the room, what they saw. The whole back of the head is blown out. There's nothing in the back of the head. And he knows that's an exit wound. He knows that's an exit wound, plus the fact that the bullet was moved by Gerald Ford up to the neck to make the magic bullet theory work. Well, guess what? A bullet never went through the body except the head. So therefore, there's no such thing as a magic bullet.
One of the things that bothers me so much about the JFK assassination is they always say, let's go to the videotape. And the Zapruder film is the most watched short film in history. It clearly shows that Kennedy was hit in the back, his hands go to his throat, which is a natural reflex when that happens, and then a few seconds later he was hit again. Yet, for some reason, the Warren Commission and our inspector determined that it was a single bullet that killed Kennedy, hence the single bullet theory. And I just don't understand how they were able to sell that to the American people and the world.
When Kennedy goes behind the sign, he's going to be hit the first time. When he comes out, you can see he's been hit. I mean, his arms have gone up. That's the bullet, they say, went and hit him in the neck in the back, and went and also zigzagged over and hit John Connally. Now, that's the shirt that Gerald Ford adjusted a little bit in the evidence so that it wouldn't look like it did, so it might just fit into the zigzag. But the shot that exploded his head, that was about 4 seconds later as he goes on down Elm Street. And it goes backwards. There's no question about that. There it is on film. And then it goes forward, and they say, well, the limousine jerked in, or there may have been some kind of explosion of the packed brain tissue. We don't know. That's the one Jackie said she almost lost her mind, understandably. And you mentioned so many people who watched it, and I've seen people who've watched it and said that just wasn't expected, and it doesn't make sense. So you really have at least 2 instances where what is on the film is not what the Warren Commission said. Most of the commission didn't believe it, but 3 did, and they were one that John Kennedy had fired, so it might be a little bit of bias there anyway. But the main point was it was very controversial, and yet it was invented and accepted because they wanted to have a unanimous opinion. Dick Russell, Senator Dick Russell, one of the commissioners, one of Johnson's real sponsor in the Senate, the guy that carried him along, didn't believe it, but he went along.
Well, Warren Commissioner John McCloy, one of the most powerful men on that commission, and a man with a real checkered background, he said, look, the thing that is of utmost importance is that we show the world that the United States is not just another banana republic where the government can be changed through conspiracy. But so that was their mandate. Not truth, not to find out who actually killed Kennedy, not to find out what actually had happened, but to mollify the passions of the world. But we do know that Earl Warren, when President Johnson tried to get him to head the Warren Commission, he turned it down 3 times. He said, no. He said, I don't want to do that. He said, and I don't think that it's constitutionally correct. One branch of the government should not be investigating another branch of the government. And Johnson, and this is well documented, twisted his arm and said, you were a military officer in World War I. You have to think of the country first. And for the good of the country, you need to chair that committee and you need to come up with certain findings. And that's what they did. And if they can arm pressure Earl Warren like that, then you can figure it'd be easy enough to pressure those young lawyers writing the report.
You do it by a absolutely stacked deck in the Warren Commission. You do it because the 2 principal data gatherers for the Warren Commission were the perpetrators. Okay. And, you know, there were so many obvious things that should have been done that weren't. When it comes to the magic bullet theory, there isn't anybody who's a pro in shooting that don't find that laughable. And I've been taught by the very best in the world, the very best. And nobody would argue with that.
One of the things that always bothers me about this is the fact that when Oswald was in the police station, Jack Ruby, a guy who owned the local strip club, just walks in there and is able to kill Oswald. And it leads me to believe that there's more to this than meets the eye, and I was wondering what you all believe was Jack Ruby's role in the JFK assassination and who gave him his marching orders.
Jack Ruby was the man with the contacts as far as with the Dallas Police Department. He knew a lot of the officers were patrons of his club. He was very important. There were tons of telephone calls to known mafia people in New Orleans, in Florida, and also in Chicago prior to the assassination, up to about 5 to 7 days prior to the assassination. And then you have individuals, mob figures showing up in Dallas, of which seen with Jack Ruby. I mean, the testimony of James Files, the sightings of at the Cabana Hotel with Jack Ruby and other known mafia figures. He is no doubt, was given the task to clean up the situation with Oswald. There's just no doubt about it.
Jack Ruby's connection with organized crime goes all the way back to his childhood when he was running messages for Al Capone in Chicago. And when you're that deeply involved, if they give you marching orders, you just do it, you know. And I think Ruby was chosen to silence Oswald because he had access. Everybody at the police station knew him. Everybody in Dallas who was anybody knew him. He was able to come and go. He was in the police station on Friday night. He even corrected District Attorney Henry Wade when Henry Wade said, and Oswald belongs to the Fair Play for Cupid Committee. And Ruby said, no, that's not right, you know. So he knew much more about all this than anybody realizes. And so it was not a question of them fearing what Oswald might say. There's probably a good chance he didn't know, you know, but they couldn't take the chance. He knew something because he had been in U.S. intelligence. He was had been working for the CIA, was working for the FBI. He implicates everybody. They couldn't have that. They had to get rid of him. And of course, organized crime was the most quick and accessible way to get to him because of Jack Ruby and his accessibility to the Dallas police and this police station.
Lee had a very special position. His uncle was mafia, and that was his uncle Charles Moret. Dutz Moret was an enforcer out on the docks for Marcello. He was a former prize fighter. When he got too old to do that anymore, Marcello gave him a cushy job, just doing books. But as a matter of fact, when Lee and his mother, she was widowed, moved to Dallas, Charles Moret, that is Dutz, Uncle Dutz, he said to Jack Ruby, of all people, and others there, he said, "Take good care of my boy." That really impressed some of those at 60 Minutes because they had found evidence that Lee Oswald and Jack Ruby knew each other, and absolutely they did.
Judith, I'm afraid you're the only one on this panel I can ask this question about. Can you tell us more about your love affair with Lee Harvey Oswald and what kind of person you want the world to know that he actually was?
I knew what kind of a man he was after we met. You see, I didn't see a wedding ring on his left hand when we first met. And it was only a few minutes after that, after I already flirted with him and everything. I was angry at my fiance for not coming, and not when he said he was going to come, not writing. I was disappointed. And here was Lee Oswald standing behind me, young and very nice looking young man. And I was attracted to him immediately. To make a long story short, it turned out that he actually knew Russian. I knew Russian. This was incredible to me because I was in New Orleans. And I didn't understand at first, but when I saw the wedding ring on his right hand, I realized that he had married someone who was probably in the Soviet Union. We started talking about things like that. When I realized that he had been in the Soviet Union and had returned at the height of the Cold War without being arrested, I knew I was looking at a hero. That's how it started. But Lee Oswald had joined an abort team, and that team had been put together in order to try to save Kennedy's life. Unfortunately, it meant that Lee Oswald had to stay put in one area, and now I believe the abort team was just concocted, put together in order to make sure he would stay where he was, waiting to maybe like stop an assassin and so on. When I said this to Jim Mars, he sat up and looked at me. He said, "Nobody knows about the abort team." And I said, "Well, yeah, I know that." No, he says, "No, but I do." He's Chicago, for example. Lee told me on the phone, "I believe I saved Kennedy's life 3 weeks ago." And he explained, he said, I don't think I'm going to get out of this alive. He said, "Will you do this for me? All I ask you is you just have to stay alive and stay down and everything like that. Tell my children, tell my little girls that I was a good guy. That's all I ask of you." How can I turn that down? I had to stay quiet. I love him with all my heart. So I'm killed on television. You'll never know what that's like to live with that kind of thing.
Why do you feel the Kennedy family has been more silent than the rest of the population in terms of figuring out who killed JFK?
Jackie was scared for the life of her children, and that is a very compelling reason. In fact, I have received information on what she said the moment John Kennedy's head was shot. And she said, "I thought I would lose my mind." It is that kind of a drama, that kind of an emotional response that compelled her to know how dangerous it was. And she had to rely on Bobby to do something. Bobby, as soon as he heard about it, called and asked several people if they were involved, and they denied it. Well, I mean, what are you going to say? You're going to say, "Oh, yeah, I was there, I did it." No. It didn't take long after that for Jackie to figure out that Johnson was somehow involved, because I have inside information, but they didn't want to highlight it because, again, Bobby was killed. And Jackie just wasn't going to tolerate the danger to her family. She left for Greece and proved to be a pretty safe place to be. The Kennedys believed there was an assassination, but they couldn't say anything without endangering their family itself, the children.
It's a very, very good question, actually. But all you have to do is you go back and you realize that what happened with Jackie right after the assassination, she fled to the arms of Aristotle Onassis, who had been locked horns with the CIA and was one of the few people on the earth who probably had the money and the power to protect her. Because I think she understood that the power had shifted, and her basic concern became that for her children. Well, you know, it's been reported that just a few days before he himself was assassinated in Los Angeles in 1968, Bobby Kennedy told some students out there, they asked him the same question. They said, what about the death of your brother? And he was quoted as saying, I cannot do anything about the death of my brother until I have the power of the presidency, which tells me he understood what I understand, which is you'd have to have power over the CIA, the FBI, the Secret Service, the whole federal bureaucracy before you can get to the bottom of who was truly behind the assassination. The only conclusion you can draw is that, yes, he was killed by the same forces that killed his brother. I mean, you know, what, are they going to wait till the night of the California Democratic primary and he wins it, which cinched him for the national Democratic nomination, which cinched him for the presidency? Now he's got power over him. You think they're going to allow that? No way.
I'd love to know your opinion on how you felt that LBJ, the CIA, and the Mafia might have worked together to commit this crime. Who had the power to cover up the assassination of JFK?
We have information. As far as Johnson or who would be involved in the planning and the execution of the plot, I can't say that, and I would hope to God they didn't, but they very well could have. But as far as covering up, from the first hour, it was covered up, no doubt, because I've worked many a major case, and on a major case, you don't solve it within 2 hours, but yet you have J. Edgar Hoover saying on a memo, we have the lone assassin. Because number one, the body should have never left Dallas County, should have never went to Washington, D.C. It was evidence in a murder case. And he appointed J. Edgar Hoover as the FBI as the head of the investigation, when in fact it should have been the Dallas police. So there was no jurisdiction for the FBI at the time. It was a local murder case. So yes, they definitely covered it up.
Lee told me the name of the operation to kill Kennedy was called the Big Event. You have the CIA operative, Mr. Hunt, who named the operation the Big Event some months after I did on tape. We had a congressional hearing going on that showed that Lyndon Johnson had accepted bribes and was involved with the mafia. And instead, he became president, and of course, they closed down that investigation. He had the choice to either become president or to go to jail. Now, which one do you think he chose? And Lee told me that. I don't want to leave the CIA out of this. It's easy to say the mafia did it, but I'm telling you, mafia could never have stolen the body and taken it to Washington, D.C. The mafia couldn't have done an awful lot of other things. This was a it was a complex deal. It involved so many people that if any of them ever told on the others, they could point the finger right back at them, you see.
What I call 5 meetings that occurred that were absolutely key. The first meeting being the negotiation for the $8 million. And of course, that negotiation opened up on LBJ's side saying he wanted to be president and Jack could be vice president, and that didn't go anywhere. The second one being the meeting where the deal was proposed, and Bobby Baker said that they're only a heartbeat away, so accept it. The third meeting occurred the night before the assassination in the Texas hotel. The next meeting was at Clint Murchison's in Dallas, rather, sorry. And then there was a last meeting, which is very key that nobody knows anything about. And aside from those meetings, there was an infrastructure over who was in charge of the overall of the day in Dealey Plaza and the various groups that had to be coordinated. In fact, I have that chain of command. And then there was, of course, also the plan for the FBI's principal role in the cover-up in terms of the physical evidence, interviews, and what have you, and the CIA's role in the cover-up in terms of seeing to it that witnesses did not bear witness. The CIA has a culture and it has a signature for killing, and I'm familiar with that signature. And whether they can, they prefer not to get their hands dirty themselves. They do that through second and third parties. Both in the CIA and the FBI, the people who were doing the dirty stuff were highly compartmentalized, and that was not general knowledge to the rank and file, nor would it agree with their culture, to be honest with you. But it happened, and I know the names. And the CIA has been pumping out disinformation for over 55 years, and they've put so many red herrings out there, and they put so much data out there, and hid so much real data, and they smoke and mirrors so much that really, without a key to the puzzle, it's hard for anybody to figure out what that's all about. The day of the assassination was like a damn carnival. People came not only from out of town, but from out of the country to watch it. There were so many people in the know. It was a social event in Texas life.
As we wrap up this panel today, I think it only fitting to ask you this last question. Is there a clear path in the not too distant future to some kind of resolution for finding justice, the complete truth for Oswald, the Kennedy family, America, and the world, to heal the wounds of the stain in history?
Transparency. We need to lance the wound. There is a path. People understand how corrupt everything has become in order to fix it. And we have a man in office right now who is the person who, when he says drain the swamp, that's exactly what he means. Which is why I have spent some very intense time with both the FBI and the Secret Service a year ago, convincing them of the absolute need to protect them, knowing both to some degree were dirty. And that I gave them a list of the people who absolutely, with raw intelligence that was current, that absolutely had to have him dead rather than be president of the United States, because the assassination of Kennedy isn't the main event. We're involved in the main event right now. This is a continuum of activity that was dirty starting with World War II, and it goes on to date. So the trouble we're in is almost biblical, that things have gotten so bad that we're at the tipping point. And if the wrong decisions are made this year, anything can happen. And I mean anything, including thermonuclear war, which I know a lot about.
I've got 4 steps here, is to get pardons for people who are either heroes or deserve a pardon. And one of them is Billy Saul Estes, who's another player in this whole thing. And you pardon him, you get a lot of clearance, I think, to go to the real ultimate objective, which is get the decision out there in writing, proven, set up, whatever it has to take. And finally, we really need to honor some people. One of them is the guy who was murdered by Johnson's orders, who refused to accept a bribe. There are others, but the big one needing a pardon, needing an honor is John Kennedy. And what I propose for him in the book is a code of ethics, one that's devoted to service and one that does something that the federal government needs really bad, and that is they cannot lie to the American people. A lot of people don't know this, but if you get lied to by someone like IRS or someone else in the government, you can't do anything to them. You can't even record it sometimes. We need to make that what George Washington really set this country on a course of doing, and that is don't tell a lie. If you chop down a cherry tree, admit it. You might be surprised to know that there are some people who say he never did that. But the fact of the matter is, it's a great myth. It's a great story, and it really has worked for us. And it goes back to that 70% of America that does not believe the Warren Commission, that believes there was a conspiracy. So it's something to bring closure, I would hope.
We know better. And this is the preponderance of those who are speaking out. They know the difference because it doesn't take very long and it doesn't take more than a double-digit IQ to figure out that Lee Oswald was framed. Many people now know the truth. People deep down aren't fooled all the time. And that's the bottom line. But what's going to endure is our love. That's what's going to endure. That is what is going to reach people. It's going to reach their hearts, and they'll know why I did this, how much I loved him, how much he loved me. And that, you see, the fact that love can conquer all things, that's the biggest thing of all.
Well, Barry, I believe that any time since 1963 that the American people would accept it is today. Probably 80% of Americans believe there was a conspiracy, but I guarantee you there's only about 10 or 20% that really want to know, because to uncover what happened in 63, it would just break everybody's bubble. I mean, it would be devastating to us Americans that the government actually kept this quiet for all these years. So I don't know if people really want it, but right now with the corruption we see that is being brought out, I think everybody's just about ready to know the truth. But one day it will come out.
The answer to your question can boil down to one word: truth. It may be too late for justice. Most of the people involved in the assassination are now dead, but it's never too late for truth. And with truth could come exoneration for Oswald and his family. For Kennedy's would understand better, if they don't already, what's happening. I heard the phrase for so many years, we have to bind up our wounds, okay, and move on. And that's very true, but we have to do that from a standpoint of truth. As long as the Kennedy assassination is basically unsolved, as long as the vast majority of people are still being hoodwinked by a corporate-owned media that does not want to deal with it, the body politic of the United States is going to continue to bleed. It's just going to be an open sore, and we've got to just close that off and move on.
I'd like to thank you all for showing up for this. This is really, really wonderful. I'd like to thank all my guests. Gordon Ferry, check out his new book, Evil, coming out hopefully within the next 6 months. And I really appreciate you coming. You were really wonderful, and you had such expertise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Barb McClellan, new book, JFK, LBJ. Check it out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was delightful.
Judith Very Baker, you can check out her works, her books. There's 3 of them, Me and Lee, David Ferry, and her new book coming out, Kennedy and Oswald, The Big Picture. She also does a JFK assassination conference every November in Dallas. Every year it gets bigger and bigger. You want to check that out this year at the Crown Plaza in Dallas. Judith, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Zach Shelton. Zach, thanks for being here.
Glad to be with you, Barry. Thank you.
Jim Morris, thank you so much. Fantastic. Check out his book, New York Times bestseller, Crossfire, The Plot That Killed Kennedy. Jim Mars, thank you so much for dedicating your time to this event.
Thank you, Barry.
And I want to thank you sincerely to all of you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm really, really grateful. I'd also like to thank Screen Vision and Chaos Connect for helping us put this film together. And if you want to hear more about the stories of great people, check out Industry Standard on iTunes. I know you'll like it a lot. Thank you so much for coming. It means the world to me. Have a great night.